Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to 7th Street. So this is a brand new video. I don't have a script for this. I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff, so hopefully I'm not too scatterbrained. I'll try to do my best to edit this together in a way that's actually coherent, and that I am not just rambling, making ridiculous claims. But I was inspired to do a film about the movie It Follows, and why I think it's sort of misrepresented and definitely underrated, and why I admire this film so much, and trying to do maybe a little bit of an analysis here on it. This was really spearheaded by a friend of mine, Steven, who's a filmmaker friend of mine, a really talented guy. I hope he sees the fun in this. I hope he doesn't get pissed off at this. I'm not trying to call anybody out or anything. I mean, this is just all in good fun, and I encourage you to if you like horror content, definitely check out his stuff. Sterling Falls Productions, really talented guy. Getting back on track, taking a look at It Follows, there are a couple of things that I want to address with this film. But before I do that, I would like to say that I think that this movie I think this movie benefits from, number one, multiple viewings. I don't think it's a movie you can watch once and just sort of go, I think I think that this movie, I'm not saying that it's anywhere near as good as something like The Shining or The Witch, but I think that this film is more of a thinker, and it benefits from multiple viewings. And I think you have to give it more than one chance. I also think that it really benefits to watch this with multiple people and to talk to those people immediately after it. I had the benefit of seeing this movie not just with my best friend, Josh Dietrich, but I also saw it with my girlfriend, Natalie, who is a very, very smart person. She's also involved in the film community, and she is very smart. She's really good at dissecting stories and the themes. And also, I think that, especially when it comes to this movie, getting a woman's perspective of the film is important. I think that, especially when you're dealing with themes of sex and violence, sex among adolescents, I feel like women see things a lot more clearly when it comes to themes such as this. I think that we as men have a pretty narrow perception of the film, which leads me to my first point. You have a lot of people saying, it's about an STD monster, which I don't think is the case. I really don't. I really don't think that this film is about sexually transmitted diseases. I actually think that this movie is about traumatic sexual experiences, especially traumatic sexual experiences among adolescents, teenagers. And I think that as men, like I said, we have a very narrow perception of things like this, right? The movie is pretty ambiguous and vague. So I think when we see a film where it deals with sex and then something is coming after you or something is following you, I think that as men, right, our brain immediately goes to a place where we say it's got to be about STDs, right? It's our worst nightmare. For a man, if you were to say, what's the worst case scenario with sex? I mean, I think 9 times out of 10, immediately people would say, herpes is going to follow me for life. Herpes is forever, man. But I don't think that that's the case with women or with most women. They live in reality when it comes to sex, and I think that we as men sort of miss a lot of the themes in this movie, which is just trauma after a sexual experience, rape. These are things that we as men don't, we don't live in that world all the time, especially as Americans. I mean, we're very, we don't talk about molestation. We don't talk about rape. We don't talk about sexual assaults. The only thing that's taught to us in schools is abstinence, right? Is just don't have sex. So I think that a lot of people miss what this film is about. Even from the opening scene, and real quick before I get into this, before I get into my first category here, which that this film is about traumatic sexual experiences, especially among adolescents, rather than it being sort of this glib story about sexually transmitted diseases. I would like to say it has been a while since the last time I saw this. I have seen it multiple times. I really enjoy this film, but I would say it's probably been at least 9 months. Well, I mean, gosh, maybe almost a year now that I've moved. I don't think I've watched it in my new place. Anyhow, so I don't offhand, I don't know the characters' names, and like I said, this was a spur of the moment video. So I didn't go back and rewatch it. I really just wanted to sort of get my thoughts down. So as you notice, I will refer to these characters as the main character, and blah blah blah. The roughshod boy, and the nerdy quiet guy who's secretly in love with the main character. I apologize for that, and if you want to beat me up in the comments, feel free to. I mean, I enjoy comments like that. I really do. It inspires me to make movies like this, or make videos like this, excuse me. This all kind of came from a discussion that I had with Steven, with a good friend of mine. Yeah, getting into it, why I think that this film is about traumatic sexual experiences. Right from the opening scene, the very first scene is this adolescent girl, this teenager, running out of her house in fear of something. And the very first thing that we see is her father coming out the front door, yelling after her. And that's something that for me, the first time watching it, I didn't pick up on. But my girlfriend picked up on that immediately. Didn't immediately say, hey, this is what this is about, but I think that imagery just sort of conjures up feelings in certain people. And it's something that I think a lot of us miss. But moving forward, I think the first real scene where you start to get a hint that this isn't just about STDs is the main character, after going on her date, there's a lovemaking scene with the guy, which is immediately preceded by a scene of violence. And sex and violence, no matter who you are, conjures up feelings of sexual assault, of rape. You can't watch that scene and not think of rape. I mean, it's very reminiscent of films like Last House on the Left, I Spit on Your Grave, all those rape revenge films. I mean, that scene is almost identical to a lot of other rape scenes out there. And I guarantee that everybody, upon their first time viewing it, were positive that that's where that was going, is that it was a rape scene. And in the very next shot, you see the woman in an abandoned building, or you see the girl in an abandoned building tied to a chair. And the guy is... that just conjures up all these other... just a whole new batch of feelings. That is very familiar to us as human beings. I mean, it just immediately screams being abducted, being raped, sexual assault. And then also the first time that we see this creature, it's a naked older woman sort of meandering around. There are just a lot of parallels between sexuality and fear and sexuality and violence, and it's all sort of intermingled into one. Later on in the film, when our main character, she has sex with sort of the roughshod guy across the street, and then he's attacked and killed. It comes in the form of his naked mother. I mean, just that scene when he opens the door and his mother is naked and he says, "Mom," and she tackles him and jumps on top of him. I mean, it's impossible to not think of incest, of molestation, of sexual assault, and I don't think that imagery, I don't think that any of this imagery is an accident. I don't think that the filmmaker was saying, this movie is really about herpes, but what we're going to do is we're going to have all these moments where the violence and the sex are intermingled. We're going to have this imagery of a mother naked on top of her son, but it's not about traumatic sexual experiences. I just refuse to believe that. And then one of the points that really leads me to believe this, or at least led my girlfriend to believe, or to come to this conclusion, this analysis of the film, is the main character's father is not in the picture. She has sort of a crummy home life. We don't even see her mother very much. As I remember, her mother is barely there. It just seems to be sort of removed from the situation. Kind of a shell of her former self, right? Because what we do see are a lot of photos all throughout the house of sort of a happy family. And we do see her father in these photos. And then we see the creature that's following her, that's tormenting her. It appears to her as her father naked. And there's even a scene where her little sister says, "Who is it? What does it look like?" And the older sister says, "I don't want to tell you." Like I said, I don't think that any of this is an accident. There's too much imagery here to write this film off as being about the herpes monster. I think that there's so much more evidence that this film is about traumatic sexual experiences among adolescents. There are even smaller little details within the film, like the way that our main character, who once again is a teenager, one of the ways that she stages off this thing that's always looming over her, that she's absolutely terrified of. One of the ways that she can kind of keep it at bay is having a sexual experience with these two grown-ass hillbilly men on a boat. And, she has this sort of, this shame about it. And like I said, for the first time for me seeing it, right, you go, oh, what a horrible person, she's, giving everybody the herpes monster. But I think talking to, like I said, immediately after the film with other people, especially getting a female's perspective of the film, there's much more. I think that there's much more going on, especially in a sequence like that. Sort of the revelation at the end of the film, much like going through a very traumatic sexual experience, is you can only stay one step ahead of it. You have to learn to live with it, right? You'll never be able to outrun it. It's like that old saying, you'll never be able to outrun your crazy self. No matter how far you run, you can never outrun your crazy self. And I think that last shot in the movie, with it just being there, it's just always going to be there, makes a lot more sense with it being about something more psychological, not something physical, right? Herpes, right? You always got herpes, it's always there. I just really don't think that the metaphor for this creature is that glib and simple. Like I said, I feel like, I could be wrong. I could be saying a lot of bullshit, but my eyes were really open to what this movie could be about immediately after seeing it. Just by getting someone else's perspective who sees sex in a very different way. Getting into my second topic here, which is just sort of gushing about how different and new and inventive I think that this movie is. Which I don't think will change anybody's mind, but I think it's worth mentioning. First and foremost, my absolute favorite thing about this film is that it has completely created not just its own subgenre within the world of horror, but that it's created its own universe. I love when movies exist within their own universe. Movies sort of like Eraserhead, where it's clear that this is not taking place in our reality, right? This is just a completely different universe from the one that we live in. I absolutely love when films do that. I love the fact that it's extremely ambiguous where we are or when we are, because it sort of doesn't matter, right? And I think that gives the film a lot of style. The film's got a lot of style. People have cell phones. Sort of. I mean, they've got like these shell cell phones, which is just, fabrication for this universe. It only exists within this movie's universe. At least, I think so. I've never seen a shell cell phone. But they're also still watching TV or movies. They're watching a black and white movie, which is actually a Russian science fiction film. It's in the public domain. I'm positive that's why they used the clip from the movie. But they're watching it on an old tube TV. It's really fuzzy because they still have an antenna attached to their TV. But the cars are all fairly recent. The music is definitely calling back sort of to the 80s. I guess just in the way that it sounds very familiar to a John Carpenter score. I'm not sure if they're trying to pull something that I like to call weaponized nostalgia, which I think is what a lot of other popular films these days are doing, and I think that a lot of fashion victims get sucked into that kind of shit. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but, like the movie It, with the New Kids on the Block stuff. Remember New Kids on the Block? That's a thing? Oh, wow, I love New Kids on the Block. It's just weaponized nostalgia. It's just, trying to distract you from some shit that does, it's trying to distract you with some shit that doesn't matter, but you get all, foofy and nostalgic about it, and, it gives you a nice laugh, and it makes you like it more. I mean, I like Stranger Things well enough, but that show is super guilty of going remember the Goonies? It's like member berries from fucking South Park. Remember the Goonies? Remember Dungeons and Dragons? It's like, okay, I think that's... It's just sort of bad storytelling. You don't need that in there. And if that's what It Follows is doing with the music, they're doing it in a very smart way. Because it sounds vaguely like a synth score from a Carpenter film. But I mean, it's definitely not something that you would, you pick up on immediately. It's not putting, a New Kids on the Block poster on the back of, a character's door and having cross-cutting to a shit ton of close-ups and making it this entire fucking theme so that, every fashion victim out there now wants New Kids on the Block shit. I mean, it's definitely not doing that. So if it is using weaponized nostalgia with its soundtrack, it's doing it in a smart way. The rest of this film is completely original. I just don't get when people won't give it credit for that. And I know that something being original or something being inventive or a breath of fresh air doesn't make the movie or the story good. That's fine. That's debatable, first of all. But like I said, I really enjoyed the ambiguous universe that it lives in. You know, it created an all-new monster, which I think is really cool. And you know, that monster being something that's, you know, rooted in our darkest fears, you know, sexual experiences in our adolescence. I mean, what is more fucking terrifying than that? Anybody who's had a sexual experience as a teenager knows that that shit is terrifying. And then really quickly, the third thing that I want to talk about is this notion that other than, and I'm going to say, you know, I'm going to quote what other people say about this, other than the STD creature, there's nothing going on with this story. One of my biggest pet peeves about horror movie fans is that they expect all the information to be spelled out to them explicitly. You have to watch this movie, you have to pay attention, and you have to read between the lines. We can exclude the fact that this is not about STDs. There's something bigger going on here. It's these traumatic experiences that these adolescents are going through. And every scene deals with it, as I said, with the sisters and their past, with their family, that you're not really let in on, but you keep getting these little clues as to, you know, where's dad and what's wrong with mom and why are we kind of left to our own devices. I think that you get these little hints and a lot, and their personality quirks really start to make sense the more you watch this film. The way that it opens, I think, is brilliant because it really leaves you guessing as to what the hell is going on. I mean, it really hooks you in, especially the theater scene, which I think is a fantastic scene. I don't think I've seen a scene that hooked you in a while like that one. I mean, through the first 15, 20 minutes of the film, you're not sure if this is actually about a monster or a ghost or a person. Is a person following them? Is this a movie about stalking? And I tend to think that that's a sign of a really, really well-written script. One that doesn't telegraph the movie to you instantly. Especially the way this movie opens is brilliant. With the, you know, if you could switch places with anyone, and then he points out someone that she can't see. And it's very, very spooky scene. I thought that I would address two of the main gripes that I hear about the story. I'm sure that there are others, but these are the two that seem to be the most stated. The swimming pool scene seems to piss a lot of people off. A lot of people say that the continuity, that the rules lose their consistency. Right? That you know, it follows you no matter what, and it'll smash windows or knock down doors to get to you. But then when they go to the pool, whatever it is starts throwing the appliances in the pool at Jay, instead of, I don't know, walking under the water. And everybody's big gripe seems to be, well, since when was that in the creature's repertoire? What I would like to point out with that is there seems to be a theme with water representing safety and security is actually rather blatant, and people that are poking holes in this movie by focusing too much on the creature rather than the story is just a bit ridiculous in my opinion. The big thing that you always hear people gripe about in regards to this movie is the swimming pool scene near the end, where they run into the gym, the swimming pool, and the whatever it is starts throwing things in the pool at her. And people are always saying, well, when was that established in the creature's repertoire? They're always saying things like, well, if you got it, why wouldn't you move to Hawaii if it can't swim? I think that people are I think that if you're coming to that conclusion, you're sort of missing the point here. And that gripe, for me, is a telltale sign that somebody didn't really pay very much attention to the story of this film. They're not getting it. Like I said earlier, I think that this is a movie that you have to think about. It's pretty clear that the water symbolizes safety and security in this film, or possibly even a childhood innocence. In the beginning of the film, Jay is always swimming. It's something that's soothing and cathartic for her. You also see photos of her past as a little kid with the family, and I believe that there's 1 or 2 pictures of them swimming. There might even be more. But if you notice throughout the film, like when Jay's in trouble, she runs to a cabin that's on the lake. After she gets out of the hospital, she's swimming. And then also, the movie also shows at one point that the pool is broken. And, I sort of interpret that as Jay's sense of safety being gone after the roughshot kid across the street dies. Greg, I believe, is his name. I think that one of the reasons that certain people really liked this film, and I really liked the film, especially when it comes to its screenplay or I guess just direction. The guy who directed this is obviously fantastic at what he does. I actually don't know his name offhand, but the story relies really heavily on this sense of dread and impending doom, rather than modern jump scares, something that's like, a dime a dozen, like Paranormal Activity and The Conjuring. They rely so heavily on jump scares and visual scares and just a loud sting. This movie doesn't. It's a very heavy film. Alright, guys, hopefully I was able to put this together in a cohesive way. And hopefully I made a little bit of sense. I mean, I know that I'll get messages right away, saying that I was rambling like a madman, which is fine, which is totally fine. I had gotten a comment on the last video that I did like this, which was rating all the Godzilla films. Someone saying that they actually really liked this format, where they didn't have to look at my ugly ass face, and it was just more of me doing like a podcast. Actually, if you could see me right now, I'm just pacing around my apartment, talking into a Zoom H1. Hopefully this was enjoyable. Hopefully you guys liked listening to this. Hopefully I don't come off like too much of an idiot. I mean, I know I usually do, and it's fine, it's all entertainment value. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong, I always say, that's the great thing about an opinion. It's just a fucking opinion. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong here. I already told Steven that I was going to make this video, but I hope you saw it in good fun, man. And like I said at the beginning of this, definitely check out some of his stuff. He's a super, super talented guy here in Portland, Oregon. Makes some really good shit, and some films that I've been in, too. So, 2 birds, 1 stone, right? So yeah, if you liked this video or disliked this video, put a thumbs up, thumbs down, comment, share it. Find us on Facebook. You can go to our website, 7thstreetfilms.com. We got some new projects coming out. Hopefully, either a feature film or a short film of ours should be playing, hopefully at Crypticon Seattle. I guess I shouldn't say that. I should probably knock on wood. But we have some exciting things coming around the corner. As well as more Reference This Film episodes and more YouTube videos. So make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and get updates every time we upload a new video. And once again, shoot me a message or something. I mean, I'm usually pretty receptive about this kind of stuff, especially when people tell me how much they hate they hate the content. Because it's flattering. that you guys are watching and hate my opinion enough to tell me. That means that I've left an impression. So until next time, guys,